Hi everyone, so this is your lesson for the week. I hope you're all safe, I hope you're all well. I'm going to try and do more of these audio PowerPoints so that hopefully it'll kind of replicate a lesson. I might do some video ones too, we'll see how it pans out. I'm learning this just as much as everyone else is kind of learning how to use the technology that we take for granted. So hopefully you'll find this useful and a little bit clearer than me just giving you the PowerPoint and letting you read through it yourself. Now, last week you were looking at reasons why Scots volunteered for the army. Now, last week was purely knowledge-based stuff. I hope you were able to work through the work and understand everything. There was also a Kahoot that I put on the Teams group that was kind of there to test your knowledge. Today, and for this week, your learning intentions are to practice an explain question and to practice a how fully question. Now, for those that did history in first, second and third year, especially the third years, you should remember and explain a how fully. For those that are joining us, there's a couple of you that I know haven't done it for a couple of years or haven't done it at all, then this will be brand new to you, but just try your best. All I ask is that you give it a go. If it goes horrifically wrong, we can fix it. If it goes right, then well done. So this week, you're going to use the work that you completed last week to help you answer 2 National 4-5 skills questions. And as I've said, you've done these before, but I'll run through how to do them again. Now, your first one is an explain skill. Now, there are 3 things you have to do to answer this question. Now, your question here is explain the reasons why so many Scots volunteered to fight in the Great War. Now, for an explain, you have to make sure that you give 6 relevant reasons for something happening. Now, they have to be correct. If they're wrong, obviously you don't get the mark. So here's your question here. What you have to do is for each new bit of information, so for each new reason, you have to link to the question, you have to make your point, and you have to explain. So, down the bottom, I've given you an example answer for a slave trade question. Don't worry about this just now because I'm going to give you an example answer or start you off for an example answer on the next slide. Now, the 3 things you have to do, as I just said, and just as a little reminder, link to the question, make your point, and explain why your point is important. Now, up above, I have given you the first, or one of the first reasons why Scots volunteered for the Great War. Now, just as a reminder, the question is explain the reasons why so many Scots volunteered to fight in the Great War. So you have to link to your question. Now, here's my link here. One reason Scots volunteered to fight in the Great War was because. Now, this because is a key word, and it lets me know that you understand that you're doing an explain question. The next bit is make your point. Now, one reason that Scots volunteered was peer pressure. Now, peer pressure by itself doesn't really explain why that led to people signing up for the war. So you've got to explain your point. And this is what you do here. This meant that some Scots felt as if they were being forced to join by their peers. So nice and straightforward if you know how to do it. You're taking your point and you're explaining. So you would do that for the other reasons that you know why Scots volunteered to join the army in 1914. Now you need to do this 5 more times because remember, it's worth 6 marks in total. I've given you the first one. You need to give me 5 more reasons why Scots volunteered to join the war. Go ahead and try that. Write out 6 different sentences. You can use the one that I've just given you, but I want 5 other different reasons. Now, if you're stuck with the work that I gave you last week, BBC Bite Size is a great start to look at some of the reasons why Scots volunteered. And what I'll do is I'll put the link on the website for the page and you can look at that also. Moving on, your next challenge is the how fully skill. So the how fully skill, you get a source. Now, in this case, it's source A. For those that haven't done history before, a source is a piece of information. Now, the how fully skill, need you to do three things. First of all, though, here's your question. Source A describes reasons why so many Scots volunteered to join the army at the beginning of the First World War. So this little bit here tells you what the source is about. Then you've got the source itself, and I'll just read through the source briefly. With 3 or 4 friends, I decided to join the London Scottish. My reason for doing this was that at my age and in my circumstances, I would have been ashamed not to do so. My parents would have been ashamed of me if I had not done so. Other reasons were that several of my friends were joining the same regiment. Also, I had already decided that I did not want to be a civil engineer. It seemed a dull sort of job. So in this source, it will give you at least 3 reasons that will help you answer the question. Now the question is, how fully does source A describe the reasons why so many Scots volunteered to join the army? Now that's the question that you need to answer. Now, it's quite good because you actually get a little prompt as to what you need to include in your answer. You need to include 3 points from the source. You need to include recall, which is your own knowledge, and you also have to reach a judgment. I'll talk you through this in the next slide. Here is just a little structure strip, just as a reminder. So you need judgment. Now your judgment is you telling me that you know that the source is not full. A source is never full of all the information that you give. So for the example just previous, you would say source A partly describes reasons why Scots volunteer to join the army. Now I've got an example on the next slide, so don't worry about remembering that just now. What you then have to do is give 3 pieces of information from the source. So you would give 1, 2, 3. Then you would give 3 bits of information that is not in the source, so from your own knowledge. And you would give 1 bit of information, 2, 3. Now, for the how fully, it's worth 6 marks. To get all 6 marks, you need to have your judgment, you need to have 3 bits of information from the source, and you need to have 3 bits of information from your brains. Please make sure that you don't just copy everything from the source, so don't copy everything. Make sure you use more than 1 or 2 words, so quote sentences in the source, and always make sure you use the source and your own knowledge. So source, own knowledge. So let's take a look at what you could do and how you would lay out your answer. So here's the source, just as a reminder again. The question is asking you, how fully does source A describe the reasons why so many Scots volunteered to join the army? You need to use the source, you need to use your recall, and you need to reach a judgment. Now, I've given you a kind of layout here. It's the same layout that's on the previous slide. It's your help sheet. Now, I've done your judgment for you. So your judgment is this sentence here. Source A partly describes the reasons why so many Scots volunteered to join the army. This word here, partly, shows that you know the source isn't full. It only partly gives us some of the information. What you then have to do is give me 3 things from the source. Now, I'm not going to pick out 3 things because that's part of your work, but there are definitely 3 reasons in here in the source as to why so many Scots volunteer to join the army. What you have to do is find them and write them in this sort of way. Source A states, source A also states, and lastly the source states, and that's your 3 source points. You then have to think, right, what do I know that's not in the source? So you would say, however, the source fails to mention and give your first knowledge point. It also doesn't mention, give your second knowledge point. And lastly, it fails to mention, give your third knowledge point. If you do each of these 3 things, you will get 6 marks. But you have to do your judgment, your 3 things from the source, and your 3 things from your own knowledge. If you don't give a judgment, you'll only get 2 marks. If you don't use the source and your own knowledge, you'll only get 2 marks.